As the world outside winds down, a different kind of journey begins. Forget the frantic pace of your day, the endless to-do lists, the constant hum of notifications. Tonight, we embark on a voyage not of miles, but of moments of forgotten rhythms, and of an ancient wisdom that speaks directly to the modern soul. This is more than just a story. It's an invitation to unwind, to let your thoughts drift, and to discover a profound connection between quietude of rest and potential for unseen growth. Have you ever felt that tug of possibility, that whisper of an idea that seems to blossom only when you're not actively chasing it? That sensation, that fertile ground for inspiration, is what we'll explore. We're going to delve into a narrative tapestry woven from the threads of history, legend, and the enduring human desire for security and prosperity, all presented in a way that allows your mind to relax while your curiosity is gently awakened. By the time the final words fade, you'll not only feel a sense of deep calm, but you'll also carry with you a newly illuminated perspective on an idea that has shaped civilizations, yet often remains hidden in plain sight. This is your moment to disconnect from the demands of the day and reconnect with a more primal, a more profound understanding of how value is created and how abundance can truly take root, not through forceful effort, but through mindful observation and the patient unfolding of time. Prepare to let the narrative wash over you, to feel the gentle currents of history carry you to distant lands and ancient eras, and to discover that the most powerful forms of earning have always been intertwined with the art of simply being. We often think of wealth, of income, as something that is directly earned, a result of labor, of hours spent toiling, of tasks completed. It's a tangible exchange, effort for reward. But what if there's a subtler, older way that value has been built, a way that's less about the sweat on your brow and more about the rhythm of the seasons, the flow of trust, and the inherent power of letting things simply be? This is the essence of the journey we're about to undertake. We're not aiming for a complex financial lesson, but rather a deeper, more intuitive understanding of a concept that has been fundamental to human society for millennia, a concept that underpins even the most sophisticated modern financial instruments, yet often feels out of reach in our fast-paced lives. Think about the moments when you felt most at peace, most open to inspiration. Was it while you were frantically juggling deadlines? Or was it perhaps during a quiet walk, a moment of reflection, or even in the liminal space just before falling asleep? It's in these pauses, these moments of intentional or unintentional repose, that our minds can often make the most profound connections. This Historia di Dormir is designed to leverage that very human phenomenon. It's crafted to be a balm for the modern mind, a gentle guide through forgotten corridors of human ingenuity, revealing how the very act of resting, of observing, and of building systems that honor natural cycles has always been a pathway to sustain value. We will journey through ancient landscapes, not as tourists, but as observers, learning from the foundational principles that govern the lives of people long before the advent of stock markets or digital currencies. You'll begin to notice patterns, to see the echoes of these ancient ideas in the world around you, and perhaps to feel a subtle shift in your own perception of how abundance can be cultivated. This is about planting seeds of understanding, not for immediate harvest, but for a gradual, fulfilling bloom. It's about rediscovering a forgotten language of prosperity, one spoken in the quiet confidence of knowing that certain things, when given the right conditions, will naturally flourish. The objective here isn't to provide a how-to guide for passive income, but to foster a deep, almost visceral appreciation for the ancient roots of this concept. We aim to create a narrative experience that, as you listen, gently guides your nervous system towards a state of calm receptivity. Imagine each word as a soft ripple on a still pond, expanding outwards, creating waves of relaxation that wash over your body and mind. This is an exploration of how, throughout history, humans have understood the power of allowing value to accrue, not just through direct effort, but through clever systems, through trust, and through the wise utilization of natural rhythms. We'll touch upon the fundamental human needs that drove these innovations and how, in their essence, they remain unchanged. It's about recognizing that the principles of leverage, of deferred gratification, and creating systems that benefit from time and trust are not modern inventions, but ancient wisdom honed over centuries. By engaging with these stories, you're not just absorbing historical facts. You're subtly recalibrating your own internal compass, aligning it with more sustainable, a more serene approach to understanding how value is generated and preserved. Think of this as a mental decluttering, a clearing of the noise that often obscures our innate capacity for understanding complex ideas in a simple, intuitive way. This Historia di Dormir is your designated space to let go of the urgency of immediate answers and to embrace the richness of thoughtful exploration, allowing the narrative itself to illuminate the path toward a more profound understanding. And so, as you settle in, let your shoulders relax, your breath deepen, and your thoughts begin to unfurl like ancient scrolls. We're about to embark on a voyage that will take us from the fertile fields of Rome to the bustling marketplaces of ancient China and to the sun-drenched banks of the Nile. These are not mere historical anecdotes. They are glimpses into the very genesis of how humanity learned to make time and trust work for them, long before the modern world even dreamed of its complexities. Prepare to be soothed, to be intrigued, and to discover that the quietest observations can often yield the most lasting rewards. Let the journey begin. In the annals of history, there are whispers of ingenuity that echo through the ages, tales of how societies, even in their most nascent forms, understood the profound value of resources, of labor, and, crucially, of time itself. We often relegate the concept of passive income, of earning while not actively engaged in direct work, to the modern era, a product of financial markets and technological advancements. Yet if we cast our gaze back, we find that the seeds of this very ideal were sown millennia ago, nurtured by the observations of farmers, the networks of merchants, and the cyclical rhythms of life itself. This is our destination tonight, a deep dive into the origins of making time work for you, presented not as a lecture, but as a comforting narrative, a Historia di Dormir for the adult mind. Imagine, if you will, the sun setting over the rolling hills of ancient Rome. The air is thick with the scent of ripening grapes and the earthy aroma of freshly turned soil. For a Roman farmer, the land was their lifeblood, their sustenance, their primary asset. But owning land was one thing. Making it yield its bounty consistently was another. Many landowners, particularly those with extensive estates, didn't always till every acre themselves. Instead, they entered into agreements, a practice that forms a foundational pillar of how we understand resource management and, by extension, earning beyond direct labor. They would lease portions of their land to tenant farmers. The arrangement was simple, yet profoundly effective. The landowner provided the land, a significant asset that required no immediate daily effort to maintain its existence. The tenant farmer, in turn, invested their labor, their knowledge, and their energy into cultivating the soil. The harvest, the fruits of this combined effort, would then be shared according to a pre-agreed division, or a fixed rent would be paid to the landowner. This was not about the landowner working the fields. It was about the landowner benefiting from the potential of their land, a potential realized through the work of another. The land, an inert asset, became a generator of income simply by existing and being made available. Does this initial concept of earning from an asset you don't directly labor on resonate with any quiet observations you've made about how value exchanges hands today? This practice, common throughout Roman agricultural history, illustrates a crucial principle: the strategic deployment of an asset. The land itself, a tangible entity, possessed inherent value. By allowing others to leverage that value through their labor, the landowner secured a return without necessarily engaging in the physical exertion of farming. It was an understanding that ownership, coupled with trusted agreement, could be a source of ongoing benefit. The risk was shared, the effort was localized, but the reward for the landowner was derived from the enduring productivity of their holdings. It speaks to a fundamental human desire to create systems that provide for one's needs and potentially for those of future generations with a degree of security and foresight. This wasn't about idleness. It was about intelligent resource allocation. It was about recognizing that the earth, under the right stewardship, would yield its riches. This observation, so seemingly simple, carries within the germ a sophisticated economic idea that assets can generate income, and that this income can be secured through trust and well-defined agreements. It's a quiet hum of prosperity, a testament to how the very ground beneath our feet could be a source of sustenance, not just through immediate cultivation, but through the foresight of its strategic deployment. Now, let your mind drift eastward, across continents and centuries, to the vibrant bustling heart of ancient China. Here, the landscape of commerce was vastly different, yet the underlying principles of value creation, of trust, and of leveraging systems for benefit were just as potent. Picture the Grand Silk Road, not just as a physical route for caravans laden with precious goods, but as a nexus of intricate trade and sophisticated financial practices that were centuries ahead of their time. In this era, merchants face a challenge: how to facilitate trade across vast distances, how to move capital efficiently, and how to mitigate the risks inherent in transporting large sums of physical currency. The answer, remarkably, was the creation of a system that resembled modern credit and early forms of paper money. Merchants would deposit their valuables, their silver or gold, with a trusted entity in one city. In return, they would receive a certificate, a promissory note, detailing the amount deposited. This certificate could then be carried by the merchant, or sent ahead with a trusted associate, to another city. Upon presentation of this document to a corresponding agent or partner, the merchant could then withdraw their funds. This was revolutionary. It meant that instead of risking a wagon full of gold being plundered on the treacherous journey, they could carry a small, easily concealed piece of paper, a symbol of their wealth. This was the birth of what we might recognize as early banking and money transfer systems. But the ingenuity didn't stop there. These certificates, these tokens of deposited wealth, began to acquire a life of their own. They could be used in trade themselves. A merchant might owe another a sum of money. Instead of exchanging physical coin, they could simply endorse the certificate over to their creditor. This created a form of circulating credit, where the promise of money, backed by tangible assets held elsewhere, became a medium of exchange. This allowed commerce to flourish at an unprecedented pace, weaving invisible threads of credit across vast networks of merchants. What does this tell us about the power of trust and the abstract representation of value in facilitating economic activity? How might the concept of a promise being as valuable as a physical asset it represents influence our understanding of wealth? This system, born out of necessity and refined by experience, allowed merchants to essentially earn from their deposited capital without it being physically tied up in transit or at risk. Their wealth, held safely by a trusted third party, could be accessed and utilized through these symbolic instruments, facilitating further trade and investment. The original capital remained, while its representation, its potential for use, flowed through the arteries of commerce. This was a form of leveraging one's existing wealth, not through active labor, but through the creation of a trustworthy and efficient system. It demonstrates how the establishment of reliable networks and the standardization of value representation can amplify economic possibilities, allowing capital to work harder and in more directions than if it were confined to physical form. It's a testament to the idea that sometimes the most profitable innovations are not about creating something new, but about organizing what already exists in a smarter, more trustworthy way. Let us now journey to the fertile lands of ancient Egypt, a civilization that understood the profound connection between the land, the people, and the cyclical nature of existence. Here, the concept of earning was deeply intertwined with the divine rhythms of the Nile, the predictable flood that brought life and fertility to the arid landscape, and the subsequent period of agricultural activity. The Egyptians didn't just farm. They lived by the pulse of the harvest. The annual inundation of the Nile was the cornerstone of their agricultural calendar. This wasn't a chaotic event, but a predictable one, a force of nature that was observed, understood, and integrated into their societal structure. During the months when the floodwaters receded, leaving behind rich, fertile silt, the Egyptians would dedicate themselves to planting, tending, and eventually harvesting their crops. This was a period of intense, direct labor, a time when the sustenance of civilization was actively being secured. However, it was the period after the harvest, the time when the land lay fallow or was prepared for the next cycle, that held a different kind of significance. This was a time of relative repose, a period for reflection, for communal celebration, and for the administration of society's resources. While the farmers might have been engaged in lighter duties or preparing for the next season, the broader society could benefit from the stored wealth of the harvest. Granaries, meticulously managed, held the surplus grain. This stored wealth was not merely a passive reserve. It was a foundation upon which the society's stability and prosperity were built. The pharaoh and the priestly class played a crucial role in managing these resources. The surplus grain, the fruits of the collective labor during the inundation period, was used for various purposes. It fed the laborers who constructed monumental temples and pyramids. It supported the scribes and administrators who maintained the complex bureaucracy, and it was used as a form of payment, a stable and reliable currency for artisans and soldiers. In essence, the stored bounty of the land, resulting from a period of intense work, provided sustenance and supported various societal functions during a period of relative agricultural inactivity. This wasn't about the farmers working during the fallow period. It was about the stored value of their labor continuing to generate benefit for the entire society. This demonstrates an ancient understanding of resource management and the power of accumulated wealth. The Egyptians recognized that the bounty of the season was not just for immediate consumption. By storing and managing the surplus, they created a buffer, a source of value that could be drawn upon over time. This allowed for societal development beyond mere subsistence. It facilitated the construction of enduring monuments, the advancement of knowledge, and the maintenance of a stable social order. Does this concept of a stored surplus, earned during a period of high activity and then utilized to support society during quieter times, feel like a precursor to how we think about reserves and investments today? The Egyptians' integration of their lives with the predictable cycles of the Nile highlights a profound respect for natural rhythms. They understood that periods of intense effort were followed by periods of rest and replenishment, and that during these quieter times, the fruits of prior labor could continue to provide security and enable progress. This was a holistic approach to earning and living, where the value generated by the land, through human effort during the fertile season, extended its benefits throughout the year, supporting the entire community. It's a powerful illustration of how understanding and working with natural cycles, rather than against them, can lead to enduring prosperity. Reflecting on these three distinct examples, the Roman landowner, the ancient Chinese merchant, and the Egyptian civilization, we see a common thread weaving through the fabric of history. It's the recognition that value can be generated and sustained not solely through direct, continuous labor, but through the intelligent utilization of assets, the establishment of trust-based systems, and the wise management of natural cycles and accumulated resources. The Roman farmer, by leasing land, benefited from an asset that did not require his daily physical toil. The Chinese merchant, by using promissory notes, leveraged his capital through a system of trust and representation, allowing it to circulate and facilitate trade without being physically present. The Egyptians, by storing the surplus of the harvest, ensured that the fruits of their labor continued to provide for society, even during periods when the land itself was at rest. These were not instances of people shirking work. Far from it. These were examples of profound insight into how to make one's resources, one's time, and one's efforts work more effectively, more enduringly. They understood that a well-managed asset could yield returns. They understood that trust, formalized, could become a powerful engine of commerce. And they understood that respecting and working with natural cycles, particularly the cycle of abundance and repose, was key to long-term stability and prosperity. It's a subtle but powerful shift in perspective, isn't it? From seeing income solely as a direct result of hours clocked, to understanding it as also being the fruit of foresight, of system building, and of patient observation. This historical journey has revealed that the desire for security, for abundance, and for a life where one's efforts are amplified is as old as civilization itself. The methods have evolved, becoming more complex, more abstract, but the core principles remain remarkably consistent. As you continue to relax, consider this. What dormant assets do you possess? What trustworthy systems could you envision or engage with? And how can you better align your own rhythms with the natural cycles of productivity and rest? These are not questions with immediate answers, but prompts for reflection, seeds that may, in the fertile ground of your quiet contemplation, begin to sprout new ideas. This Historia di Dormire has aimed to gently illuminate these ancient pathways, to show you that the concepts often discussed in modern terms of financial independence and passive income have deep historical roots. They were born from the observation of nature, the ingenuity of human interaction, and the fundamental understanding that time, when respected and utilized wisely, is perhaps the most valuable asset of all. Perhaps you've noticed that certain stories or concepts resonate more deeply when you're in a state of calm. This is because when our minds are at ease, we are more open to absorbing new perspectives, to making connections, and to allowing insights to surface organically. The ancient Egyptians, in their understanding of the Nile's flood and subsequent periods of repose, intuitively grasped this principle of cyclical productivity. Just as a land needs its time of rest to be fertile again, so too does a human mind benefit from periods of quietude to process, to integrate, and to innovate. Think about the Roman farmer again. Their land, when not actively cultivated, wasn't unproductive. It was simply in a different phase of its cycle, awaiting the tenant's labor to yield its return. The landowner, by securing an agreement, was essentially betting on the land's inherent ability to produce, an ability that transcended any single season of direct work. This is the essence of letting an asset work for you. It's about trusting in its fundamental capacity to generate value over time, often with minimal ongoing direct input from the owner. How does this contrast with the often urgent, always-on mentality prevalent today? And the Chinese merchant, by creating and using those promissory notes, tapped into the power of collective trust. Their deposited wealth was a silent, steady anchor, while the paper instruments allowed for dynamic economic activity. It's a beautiful metaphor for how belief and standardized systems can unlock dormant potential. The perceived value of the note, backed by real assets, enabled a multiplier effect on their capital, a form of earning derived not from additional labor, but from the efficiency and reliability of the system itself. Have you ever thought about the invisible networks in your own life that facilitate value, be it trust in a service provider or the implicit agreement when using a common currency? The Egyptian granaries, overflowing with a harvest, represent not just stored food, but stored potential. This surplus sustained the builders of pyramids, the scribes who recorded history, the soldiers who defended the borders. It was a form of deferred reward, a testament to the wisdom of saving for future needs and enabling future endeavors. It speaks to the fundamental human practice of creating reserves, of planning for the lean times, and of using accumulated bounty to foster societal growth. This resonates deeply with the modern concept of investing, of setting aside resources today for greater benefit tomorrow. This Historia di Dormir has been an exploration into foundational wisdom of making value work for you, not through frantic effort, but through astute observation, trustworthy systems, and respect for natural rhythms. It's about understanding that rest is not idleness, but often a vital precursor to future productivity, both for the land and for the mind. The quiet moments, the period of repose, are when the seeds of insight can truly take root and flourish, much like the fertile silt left by the Nile's receding waters. As the narrative draws to a close, and you feel the gentle tug of sleep, I encourage you to hold on to this feeling of expanded awareness. Notice the subtle way your breath deepens, how the tension in your shoulders might ease. This is a natural consequence of allowing your mind to wander through these ancient landscapes of ingenuity, unburdened by the immediate demands of the waking world. The universe, in its grand, unhurried fashion, has a way of multiplying value, not always through aggressive pursuit, but often through patient cultivation and the wise use of what we already possess. Let this sense of calm, this feeling of fertile silence, accompany you into your dreams. May your rest be deep, and may the quiet moments ahead bring you clarity and gentle inspiration. Beyond the direct leasing of land or the abstract representation of wealth, another profound layer in the ancient understanding of sustained value resided in the meticulous art of resource management and the deliberate cultivation of agricultural surpluses. Consider the intricate systems developed not just for immediate consumption, but for the strategic stockpiling and distribution of essential goods, particularly grain. This wasn't merely about storing food for a rainy day. It was about engineering a form of economic resilience and enabling societal advancement during periods when direct productive activity was naturally curtailed. This practice extended far beyond simple hoarding. It involved sophisticated logistical networks, precise calculations of yield, and a deep understanding of population needs. Governments and governing bodies, recognizing that a consistent supply of staples like grain was paramount for stability, invested heavily in creating and maintaining vast granaries. These were not just passive storage facilities. They were dynamic economic engines. They served as a buffer against famine, of course, but more subtly, they acted as a form of societal capital. Picture a community where the harvest season is a time of intense, collective effort, Every available hand is engaged in sowing, nurturing, and reaping. The immediate fruits of this labor are consumed, yes, but a significant portion is intentionally set aside. This surplus, this stored wealth, then becomes a backbone of economic activity during the non-planting or non-harvesting months. It could be used to pay laborers involved in public works. Think of the construction of irrigation channels, defensive walls, or religious edifices. It could also serve as a form of wage or compensation for artisans, scribes, or even soldiers, individuals whose contributions were vital but not directly tied to immediate food production. Consequently, the stored bounty of the land fueled the very infrastructure and administration of society. Furthermore, this careful management of surplus introduced a concept akin to early forms of interest or dividend. In some societies, those who contributed to the upkeep or management of these granaries, or perhaps those who provided the initial capital or labor to secure and expand them, could receive a share of the distributed surplus. This was a return on investment, not in gold or silver, but in essential commodities, directly linked to the successful management and preservation of agricultural wealth. This highlights a crucial distinction: earning not from one's immediate physical labor, but from the strategic oversight and preservation of an essential resource, thereby enabling a consistent flow of benefit over time. Now, consider how this principle transforming a tangible surplus into a basis for ongoing compensation or return might be applied in situations where you manage not just personal resources, but communal or shared ones. Conversely, while the focus might have been on grain, the principle extended to other vital resources. Think of timber from managed forests or materials gathered for crafting tools and shelter. The deliberate act of setting aside more than immediately needed, coupled with a system for its equitable distribution or utilization, allowed for activities that extended beyond mere subsistence. It fostered specialized labor, supported governance, and permitted the undertaking of large-scale projects that would be impossible if every effort was solely focused on immediate survival. This deliberate creation of a strategic reserve illustrates a profound understanding that true prosperity lies not just in abundance, but in the intelligent application and management of that abundance to create sustained value, even during periods of natural quiescence. Another crucial layer in understanding ancient value creation lies in the deliberate development of specialized craftsmanship and its subsequent economic implications. Beyond the foundational production of sustenance, early societies recognized the enduring worth of highly skilled artisans whose work, though not directly contributing to immediate food security, provided essential tools, durable goods, and items of cultural or religious significance. Consider the stonemasons who carved elaborate temples, the metalworkers who forged superior agricultural implements and weapons, or the weavers who produced resilient textiles for both practical and ceremonial use. The time, dedication, and honed expertise required for such crafts meant that these items were inherently more valuable and longer-lasting than those produced with basic, everyday tools or unskilled labor. Consequently, the fruits of these specialized skills represented a distinct form of accumulated wealth. A master blacksmith, for instance, might produce a plowshare that lasts multiple seasons, significantly enhancing a farmer's productivity over time compared to a quickly fashioned, inferior tool. This durability and superior performance constituted an inherent value that could be exchanged for other goods and services, effectively creating income for the artisan. Building on this, however, the economic impact of these crafts extended beyond the individual artisan's immediate earnings. The availability of high-quality tools, armor, or vessels facilitated greater efficiency and security for the entire community, thereby indirectly contributing to the overall prosperity and stability that allow for the very continuation of these specialized roles. Now, consider how the master of a skill, even one that seems unrelated to immediate survival needs, can build a foundation for sustained economic contribution and societal advancement. Furthermore, the management of these skilled artisans often involved systems that mirrored early forms of patronage or guild-like structures. Rulers or wealthy landowners might commission large-scale projects, providing artisans with resources, sustenance, and protection in exchange for their dedicated labor. This arrangement allowed the artisans to focus exclusively on honing their craft, free from the immediate pressures of subsistence farming. The output of their collective efforts, whether monumental architecture or finely crafted regalia, represented a significant accumulation of societal wealth and prestige, often serving as tangible proof of that society's capabilities and resourcefulness. This commissioned work, in essence, transformed individual skill into collective capital, generating value that far surpassed the immediate cost of materials or sustenance. Building on this, how might the strategic investment in nurturing specialized talents within a community create a ripple effect of economic benefit that endures for generations? Conversely, the value derived from such craftsmanship was often not directly transactional in the way of farmer-sold grain. Instead, it was embedded within the item itself and the reputation of its maker. A beautifully crafted pot or a well-made leather pouch held its value through its utility, its durability, and the artistry it displayed. This form of value creation was less about rapid exchange and more about enduring worth. The artisan's skill was a form of capital, one that depreciated much more slowly than a perishable commodity, and one that could be passed down as a legacy, a testament to sustained excellence. This concept of value residing in intrinsic quality and prolonged utility offers a different lens through which to view earning, one that prioritizes longevity and ingrained excellence over ephemeral transactions. What does this perspective suggest about the true nature of lasting value in the goods and services we encounter today? The emergence of what we might call information as a commodity also played a vital role in ancient economic ecosystems, offering yet another avenue for value creation beyond the tangible. In societies where literacy was a rare and highly prized skill, scribes and scholars held a unique position. Their ability to record transactions, draft legal documents, interpret religious texts, and transmit knowledge across generations was not just a service. It was an invaluable asset in itself. Think of the economic implications of society that could accurately track its grain reserves, enforce contractual obligations through written agreements, or preserve vital instructions for agricultural techniques or construction methods. The knowledge held by these individuals, the very act of their intellectual labor, directly contributed to the efficiency, fairness, and continuity of economic and societal operations. A well-drafted land deed, for instance, prevented disputes and ensured clear ownership, thereby safeguarding investments and facilitating further transactions. Similarly, accurate record-keeping of trade agreements prevented disputes and fostered trust, essential for the smooth functioning of commerce. Now, consider how the application of specialized knowledge, even if not directly producing a physical good, can create tangible economic benefits by reducing risk, ensuring order, and facilitating complex interactions. This information, recorded and disseminated by scribes, wasn't consumed like food. Its value was in its utility, its ability to guide decisions, validate claims, and preserve cultural continuity, thus generating a form of lasting economic leverage. Furthermore, the transmission of the specialized knowledge often involved a form of apprenticeship or tutelage, where master scribes or scholars would impart their skills to younger generations. This process, while requiring an investment of time and effort from the teacher, established a pipeline for the continued availability of this crucial intellectual capital. The elder scribe, by successfully training a successor, ensured that their knowledge base would persist, continuing to provide value to the community long after their active participation ceased. This act of knowledge transfer, therefore, represented an investment in the future economic well-being of society, a way of ensuring that the mechanisms of order and commerce will continue to function. How might the principle of investing in the education and training of others, thereby multiplying the availability of valuable skills, inform your own understanding of creating enduring value? Conversely, this reliance on specialized knowledge also created opportunities for those who possessed it to command significant remuneration, not necessarily in direct daily labor, but in the form of ongoing compensation or stipends for their essential services. Their role wasn't until the soil or forged metal, but to provide the intellectual scaffolding that allowed these other activities to flourish securely and efficiently. The earning here was derived from the intrinsic value of accurate information, reliable documentation, and the preservation of learned wisdom. This intellectual capital, carefully cultivated and systematically applied, became a cornerstone of economic stability and societal progress, demonstrating that value can be generated and sustained through the power of organized thought and its effective communication. In the tapestry of ancient economies, beyond the tangible yields of land and the abstract representation of capital, a subtler yet equally potent engine of value generation emerged: the strategic management of communal labor and public works. Consider the construction of irrigation systems, roads, and defensive structures that characterized many early civilizations. These were not solely the domain of individual enterprise. They often represented a collective investment, a pooling of effort orchestrated for the benefit of the entire community or ruling authority. The labor itself, contributed by a significant portion of the populace, was a tangible asset that yielded long-term returns. A well-maintained canal, for instance, did not just support a single farmer. It enhanced the productivity of an entire region, ensuring more consistent harvests and thus a more stable food supply for all. The creation of sturdy roads facilitated trade, allowing goods to move more efficiently and safely between different communities, thereby stimulating economic activity across a broader geographic scope. Building on this, however, the economic genius lay not merely in the physical act of construction, but in the organization and timing of that labor. During periods when agricultural demands were naturally lower, such as during flood seasons or post-harvest lulls, communal labor could be redirected towards these public works projects. This strategic deployment of human capital ensured that time, a resource that would otherwise be less productively occupied, was instead invested in infrastructure that yielded ongoing benefits. Consequently, the society effectively earned increased resilience, expanded trade capabilities, and enhanced security, all stemming from the organized application of labor during periods of natural repose. Now, think about how analogous principles of pooling resources or directing efforts during downtime might create lasting value in projects you engage with, even in a modern context. Furthermore, the benefits derived from these public works often manifested as a form of deferred, yet widespread, economic advantage. A more efficient irrigation system meant reduced risk of crop failure, leading to more predictable yields and therefore more stable prices for foodstuffs. Improved roads lowered the cost and increased the speed of transporting goods, making markets more accessible and profitable for a wider range of producers and merchants. Defensive walls protected not only the inhabitants, but also their stored resources and trade routes, safeguarding the accumulated wealth of the community from external threats. This continuous, albeit indirect, economic uplift, stemming from initial collective labor, illustrates a sophisticated understanding of how investing in shared infrastructure could generate sustained return for all stakeholders, a form of communal passive income derived from collective foresight and effort. What does this paradigm of shared investment yielding shared long-term dividends suggest about the potential for collaborative ventures in contemporary settings? Conversely, the management of these large-scale labor initiatives also introduced the concept of specialized oversight and administration. Someone needed to plan the projects, procure materials, coordinate the workforce, and ensure the quality of the construction. This administrative layer, while not directly engaged in physical labor, was crucial for maximizing the value derived from the collective effort. These administrators, through their organizational skills and foresight, played a pivotal role in transforming raw labor into enduring assets, thereby earning a form of compensation for their crucial role in orchestrating and safeguarding the economic gains. Their contribution highlights that value creation isn't solely about production, but also about effective management and strategic deployment of resources, including human effort. The evolution of trade routes beyond their role as conduits for goods also fostered a unique form of intangible asset: market knowledge. As merchants traversed vast distances, they gathered not just physical commodities, but crucial intelligence about supply and demand in distant locales, fluctuations in currency exchange, and emerging consumer preferences. This information, when strategically gathered and disseminated, became a valuable commodity in itself. A merchant who understood that a particular region had a surplus of wool and a burgeoning demand for dyed silks could preemptively acquire the latter, securing a more favorable exchange rate or ensuring availability before competitors even recognized the opportunity. This acquired intelligence allowed for more calculated risks and higher potential returns, essentially enabling a form of earning derived from foresight and information asymmetry. Furthermore, the development of rudimentary networks, where trusted individuals would share insights or relay messages, amplified this effect. This wasn't about possessing physical capital, but about wielding knowledge that could shape market dynamics. Now, consider how the act of gathering, processing, and acting upon specialized information can provide a distinct advantage in modern markets, independent of direct labor input. This market intelligence wasn't always explicitly bought or sold, but it was implicitly rewarded. Merchants who consistently made profitable ventures were often those who cultivated these information networks, fostering relationships built on mutual benefit and shared intel. The act of traveling and observing became an investment, yielding dividends in the form of market opportunities. A trader might spend months traversing routes, not just transporting goods, but meticulously noting price variations, seasonal demands, and political stability. This accumulation of experiential data provided a significant competitive edge, allowing them to forecast trends and position themselves for maximum gain when they returned to their home markets. Building on this, how might dedicating time to understanding market trends and consumer behavior, rather than focusing solely on immediate sales, create a more sustainable form of value creation in your own endeavors? Conversely, the very act of establishing standardized weights, measures, and even early forms of currency facilitated a more predictable economic environment. When everyone agreed on the value of a particular measure of grain or a specific coin, the transaction became less about negotiation and more about efficient exchange. This standardization, often driven by governmental or religious authorities, reduced friction in trade and allowed for more sophisticated economic planning. The predictability it introduced meant that investments in infrastructure or specialized production could be made with greater confidence, as the value of the output was more reliably quantifiable. This, in turn, enabled a more stable form of earning, less dependent on the vagaries of arbitrary valuation, and more grounded in a shared understanding of worth. Consequently, the groundwork laid by these standardization efforts allowed for the development of more complex financial instruments and trade practices in later eras. Moreover, the concept of collateral, of using tangible assets to secure loans or agreements, was fundamental. A farmer might pledge a portion of their upcoming harvest as security for a loan to purchase seeds or tools. This allowed individuals with limited immediate capital but valuable future productive capacity to access resources. The lender, assured by the tangible collateral, was willing to extend credit, knowing that if the borrower defaulted, they could recover their investment from the pledged assets. This system not only enabled individual enterprise, but also facilitated the flow of capital within the economy, allowing resources to be deployed where they could generate the most yield. Consider how the principle of securing future potential through present collateral operates in modern financial systems, and how this historical precedent underscores its enduring utility. This practice represented an early form of leveraging assets to facilitate economic activity, allowing potential productivity to be converted into present operational capacity, thus generating earning potential that might otherwise have remained dormant. The strategic development of standardized weights and measures represents a fascinating, often overlooked, cornerstone of early economic stability and a precursor to sophisticated value management. Before universally accepted units of measurement, transactions were often fraught with ambiguity and potential for fraud. A trader might agree to exchange a quantity of grain, but the definition of a quantity could vary wildly depending on the seller's personal measure or the buyer's willingness to accept a less than full measure. This inherent uncertainty not only hindered trade, but also fostered mistrust. The formalization of standardized weights for precious metals and standardized measures for bulk goods like grain, liquids, or textiles provided a common language for commerce. When an agreement stipulated 10 pounds of silver or a bushel of wheat, both parties understood precisely what was being exchanged. This shared understanding dramatically reduced disputes and facilitated larger-scale trade, as merchants could confidently enter into contracts knowing the exact quantity and quality they would receive or deliver. Now, consider how the absence of such standardization in a modern context, perhaps in a nascent or informal market, would immediately inflate transaction costs and limit potential for growth. Building on this foundation of standardization, the concept of coinage emerged as a revolutionary leap forward in facilitating economic exchange. While early forms of credit and bartering had their place, the physical transport of bulk goods or even precious metals was cumbersome and risky. The introduction of coinage, where standardized weights of precious metals were stamped with market authority, often that a ruler or a governing body, provided a portable, easily divisible, and universally recognized medium of value. This stamp served as a guarantee of the metal's purity and weight, eliminating the need for constant re-verification in every transaction. Consequently, trade could occur with unprecedented speed and efficiency. A merchant could carry a small pouch of coins representing significant value, facilitating transactions across vast distances without the burden of transporting raw materials or untraceable promissory notes. This shift from commodity-based exchange to token-based currency allowed capital to circulate much more freely, enabling greater investment and economic specialization. Think about the inherent trust placed in a modern currency's minting and how that trust underpins its universal acceptance. Furthermore, the establishment of designated marketplaces and market days played a crucial role in concentrating economic activity and fostering a more robust system of earning. Rather than relying on scattered individual transactions, these centralized hubs allowed buyers and sellers to converge at predictable times and locations. This aggregation of economic actors created a more dynamic environment. Prices could be more easily assessed through observation of supply and demand. Competition among sellers often led to better quality and fairer pricing, and buyers could access a wider variety of goods in one place. This efficiency not only benefited individual traders, but also contributed to the overall economic health of a region. The market day became a focal point for wealth generation, a time when goods and services were exchanged, debt settled, and new opportunities discovered. How might the concept of a dedicated exchange hub, whether physical or digital, streamline processes and unlock greater value in endeavors you are involved with? Conversely, the very act of creating and maintaining these market structures, including the infrastructure for stalls, the security for traders, and the administrative oversight to ensure fair practices, represented an investment by governing authorities or established merchant guilds. This investment was often recouped through market tolls or fees levied on transactions. Thus, the governance and facilitation of trade itself became a revenue-generating activity, demonstrating another layer of earning derived not from direct production, but from creating and managing the environment in which economic activity could flourish securely and efficiently. This underscores the idea that establishing order and providing reliable infrastructure can in itself be a source of sustained economic benefit, allowing for more fluid and profitable exchange of goods and services. The establishment of specialized guilds and craft fraternities represented a pivotal advancement in how skills translated into sustained economic value, moving beyond individual enterprise to organized collective benefit. These were not mere social clubs. They were powerful economic engines that regulated their respective trades, ensuring quality, controlling membership, and setting standards that benefited both producers and consumers. Consider the guilds of medieval Europe. A master goldsmith, for example, wouldn't just ply his trade in isolation. He was part of a fraternity that dictated the purity of the gold used, the techniques employed in crafting intricate designs, and the acceptable price range for finished pieces. This standardization prevented a race to the bottom in terms of quality, ensuring that the label Master Goldsmith carried inherent trust and value. Consequently, consumers were more willing to pay a premium for goods produced under guild supervision, knowing they were receiving a reliable, high-quality product. Now, consider how this model of regulated quality assurance and collective reputation building might inform approaches to ensuring value in contemporary service-based industries. Furthermore, these guilds acted as sophisticated training grounds, institutionalizing the transmission of valuable craft knowledge. Apprenticeships, rigidly structured, ensured that specialized skills were passed down meticulously from master to journeyman to apprentice. This process not only guaranteed a steady supply of skilled labor, but also fostered innovation within the trade. As masters taught their techniques, apprentices would observe, experiment, and eventually develop their own refinements, contributing to the evolution of the craft over generations. This structured knowledge transfer ensured that the intellectual property of a trade, the techniques, the understanding of materials, the artistic sensibilities, was preserved and enhanced, acting as a perpetual source of economic value for the guild and its members. Building on this, how might the formalization of knowledge sharing and skill development within a collaborative framework amplify long-term economic potential? Conversely, the collective bargaining power of guilds offered significant economic leverage. By acting as a unified body, they can negotiate favorable terms with authorities for market access, taxation, and trade regulations. They could also collectively set prices or influence supply, thereby stabilizing their incomes and protecting themselves from undue economic pressures. This ability to negotiate as a collective meant that individual craftspeople, who might have been vulnerable on their own, were part of a resilient economic unit. This organization fostered a more predictable income stream, akin to a form of distributed passive income derived from the collective strength and regulated practice of the trade itself. Consequently, the stability and prosperity generated by these guilds allowed for investment in their communities and the further development of their crafts, creating a virtuous cycle of economic growth. The concept of a unified professional body safeguarding and enhancing the economic prospects of its members through the regulation of skills and market access remains a powerful model. Reflecting on this journey so far, we've traversed landscapes where the very definition of value and earning has been shaped by forces far subtler than immediate exertion. The echoes of ancient ingenuity, from the fertile fields to the bustling marketplaces and beyond, reveal a consistent human endeavor to create systems that allow prosperity to accrue not solely through the direct application of one's hands, but through the intelligent cultivation of underlying potential. It's as if we've been gathering disparate threads, each representing a unique approach to value creation, and now, as we move towards our final contemplation, these threads begin to intertwine, forming a richer, more cohesive pattern. In light of these insights, the path forward becomes clearer, illuminated by the convergence of these historical explorations. What emerges is not a simple lesson, but a nuanced understanding of how human civilization has consistently sought to leverage inherent strengths, be they in land, in trust, in knowledge, or in organization, to foster enduring security and growth. The principles we've glimpsed are not relics of forgotten past. Rather, they're foundational elements that have, in various forms, continuously shaped our economic realities, often operating beneath the surface of our daily awareness. As we pivot towards our final reflection, consider the cumulative effect of these various strategies. It's akin to observing a slow, majestic river that, fed by countless tributaries, gathers momentum and depth, carving its path with an undeniable yet unhurried force. Each historical innovation, each system of managed value, has contributed to this broader understanding of how abundance can be cultivated through mindful stewardship and perceptive engagement with the resources available, both tangible and intangible. The wisdom lies not in a single grand discovery, but in the persistent, iterative refinement of these fundamental concepts across millennia. This journey has been an invitation to perceive the underlying currents that have guided human economic development, revealing a profound interconnectedness between thoughtful action, trust, and the passage of time. It suggests that the seeds of sustainable prosperity have always been sown in the fertile ground of observation and strategic integration, allowing for returns that extend far beyond the immediate harvest of direct labor. As we prepare to draw these threads into their final conclusion, a sense of broad perspective is invited, one that acknowledges the deep historical roots of creating enduring value. The threads we've gathered, from the Roman farmers' leased land to the intricate credit networks of ancient China and the cyclical abundance of the Egyptian Nile, all converge on a singular, potent truth. The art of creating sustained value is as old as civilization itself, and its most profound expressions have always been intertwined with patience, trust, and the astute management of inherent potential. We've journeyed through a history where earning was not solely about the sweat of one's brow, but about the foresight to let assets speak for themselves, the courage to build systems based on mutual faith, and the wisdom to harmonize with the natural rhythms of life. This isn't about discovering a hidden financial loophole. It's about reclaiming an ancient understanding that our most significant gains often arise not from relentless effort, but from cultivating fertile ground, whether that ground is literal earth, a network of trust, or the quiet spaces within our own minds. This exploration into the genesis of passive income, this rediscovery of how value has historically been cultivated through observation and cyclical living, serves as a gentle recalibration for our modern sensibilities. It reminds us that the relentless pursuit of immediate returns can blind us to the power of long-term cultivation. The ancient world, in its own way, understood that rest was not an absence of productivity, but a vital component of it, a necessary pause that allowed for deeper growth and more enduring yields. Just as the land requires its fallow periods to replenish its strength, so too does the human spirit and intellect benefit from moments of repose to process, to connect, and to allow inspiration to bloom organically. This historical perspective offers a profound antidote to the hurried pace of contemporary life, suggesting that true abundance is often a slow ripening fruit, nurtured by patience and a deep respect for the unfolding of time. The enduring legacy of these ancient practices lies in their quiet insistence that value can be amplified, not by working harder, but by working smarter, by leveraging what already exists, and by building trust into the very fabric of our interactions. It's an invitation to shift our perspective from a purely transactional mindset to one that embraces the generative power of well-managed assets, robust networks, and a harmonious relationship with natural cycles. This is not merely an intellectual exercise. It's a call to integrate this timeless wisdom into our present realities, to recognize the dormant potential within our own lives, and to cultivate an environment where value can accrue not through constant exertion, but through thoughtful stewardship and the unwavering belief in the power of patient growth. The true practice begins now, in the quiet contemplation that follows, in the subtle shift perspective that can, over time, lead to a more serene and profoundly abundant existence.